And then, as I was saying, the rose amongst the thorns, Mr. Casper Pedo, please, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Yavi. And yes, it's indeed a privilege to be among women in this conversation. It's really amazing. So yeah, so thank you so much. So yeah, so at this point, Caspar is, I'm a development practitioner for over 17 years and currently working for Fairtrade Africa as the head of region for East and Central Africa Network. Now, at this point, I'm here in capacity as a Fairtrade staff, and certainly to share with you the wealth and the richness of working with Fairtrade. Well, Fairtrade as a name, obviously, we are advancing the values and principles of fair trade, and a lot more in promoting sustainable and equitable trade and production, mainly from the agriculture value chain producers. And I'm talking about initially much more with export focus on the global north. Now we're sort of shifting a little bit, expanding the market, and we're saying, well, the growth, particularly among African consumers, with a strength on middle class growing really well. We're hoping that we can also, continue building up on that and focusing on ethical consumption and responsible consumption, and ensuring that the producers are able to secure market as well in the global south. Now, fair trade is a system. So Fairtrade Africa is a member of Fairtrade International. At Fairtrade Africa, we are representing up to about 1.3 million producers and workers. And when I talk about producers and workers, I mean producers that we have, those that have actually been divided into what we call small producer organizations, mainly comprising smallholder farmers. And these ones are organized into cooperative societies and cooperative unions. And then we have the so-called the hired labor sector, much more in the in the big plantation agriculture. We promote equitable and sustainable trade through voluntary standards, which are much more focusing on social and environmental requirements. But again, much more we are looking deep into the market and what we call fairly slightly higher prices for our commodities that are under, call it fair trade mark. And we're saying, well, the slightly higher prices come back, a portion of it in form of premium, which also is put into social and economic development of the communities from where the production happens. I think that would be about it. Quite related to what Susan has brought up is from the experience we actually have is women are so much confined to cultural and societal patriarchal walls that sort of don't seem to be able to help at all in terms of promoting women in business or in trade. We are looking at so many things. And as working with the cooperative unions and societies, especially for smallholder farmers, quite clearly, women are not found in the leadership role. They're actually not even included in the decision-making process. Businesses are being carried out by men, of course, at the expense, and yet the production process, you'd actually find over 50–60% representation. Yet what they get back is nothing, because they don't own land, they do not own resources, but yet they spend most of their time and energy in the farms and all that. So one of the key things that we actually need to do is, again, get back into breaking that cultural, religious, patriarchal barriers, and that is a part of what we're actually doing. I mean, we carry out, we actually, for instance, at Fairtrade Africa, we have a program that's called, it's called basically a program that we developed to support women on certain coffee bushes, and then out of that, we supported them to come up with their own production chain. It's actually called Zawadi Coffee Women. Perhaps at a certain point you'll find them in shelves across Africa. And this is again to show both men and women that if we worked on promoting women in business, eventually the value is going to be felt across, not just among women. So this is one way of supporting through the process to ensure that the barriers are actually broken, and that they're able to now take part after the capacity that actually able to take part in the trade throughout, whether it's cross-border trade, whether it's regional trade, and that they actually are present, they are actively participating in the process.
I hear you. I hear you. Active participation. So I'm going to come to you, Caspar. You know, the fair trade environment intrigues me. What is the percentage split, do you think, of, well, you know, we live in a non-binary kind of gender society, but from a woman perspective, what percentage split do you think? What percentage of your fair trade market in Africa or in East Africa, whichever you can answer for, is women? And is fair trade something women actually focus on? Like, and you know, if so, yes, you know, this is why. If not, why do they not? If they don't, but yeah, I'm very interested in understanding, you know, where does fair trade fit into the women agenda?
Thank you, Yavi. I think there are two things that I got to sort of try to clarify here. Is yes, I mentioned that we embrace the principles and values of fair trade. But again, just remember that fair trade as an organization is a voluntary certification organization. And yes, so a bit more specialized in supporting development through, you know, special kind of trade. Having said that, one thing that's also clear, and again, I mentioned it earlier, is that yes, the prices that are being sold under fair trade terms are slightly higher. There is an amount that comes back for social development. So you would actually find, you know, children or students that are actually, you know, going to school through the bursary from Fair Trade Premium. You'll find, you know, various sort of, you know, development aspects of the community that come in through Premium and all that. But apart from that, much more importantly is that the Fair Trade standards also provide for the, you know, produce organizations, call it, you know, cooperatives and all this, to build organizations that are more democratic and inclusive in the way they run and manage their affairs. And so the trade also includes the fact that women need to be involved in the supply chain. And I'm talking about women, but also youth are so much, you know, a focus as well. So the advantage of being part of fair trade system, particularly for women, is that they can actually see the value for them participating in the supply chain. And apart from that, of course, that they are recognized by the amount of resources and time that they put into the production process. And so, yes, so we are promoting that, and knowing that, of course, fair trade as an organization also has a strong focus on the more vulnerable part of the society. So women become our greater focus in the whole agenda, whether it's actually environmental issues, whether it's actually social issues, but participation of women is actually very key. And so in the South, particularly right now, we are really working hard. We have different programs that are working towards promoting women in business, very key, connecting them to the market. But before that, even the sustainable farming systems that we produce, we make sure that they're actually engaged in the process.
Oh, so it is something that you really focus on, and it seems like it is on its way to growing and becoming more of an issue with not an issue, but more of a focus area actually with your particular market.
Yes. Yeah? Can I cut you short? That something you asked and I didn't mention is still, it's actually a little scandal that yes, we are talking about close to half or 50-60% of the women are involved in this, in the oil production and value chain, but directly only 25% of women are directly involved in the fair trade. So this is something that we need to really, and we're making a lot of deliberate efforts to change and expand their direct involvement.
Okay. I see. You are wanting to do that. Cool. So while I have you, the AFCFTA is almost here, I like to say, because I don't want to say at what stage it is, because we are affected. It's been affected. We are at protocols are being negotiated. Some of them are finalized. We are waiting for that final operationalization. Kenya, my brothers and sisters in Kenya and South Africa's borders are now, effectively open to them. So there was tea being moved from Kenya. And so we've done a little bit of stuff in terms of the AFCFTA. So it's almost here, but it's not fully operationalized as yet. With that agenda coming in terms of the operationalization of the AFCFTA, what types of products thrive in a fair trade environment from an Africa perspective in terms of intra-Africa trade under the AFCFTA? What products will thrive that are thriving at the moment? What products will thrive under the AFCFTA? And conversely, what products are not thriving and won't thrive under the AFCFTA? And how do we use women to be able to close some of those gaps? How do we unlock the potential, which is the assignment for the four of us to kind of get to? How do we unlock the potential for women to be able to close the gaps and address the challenges that you are finding from a fair trade perspective in terms of operationalization of the AFCFTA?
Thank you, Yavi. Yes, I two areas that I want to mention. One is that I think it was on the 5th of October that the Kenyan president flagged off consignment of tea export to Ghana for the first time. That was already quite positive. And that's already giving a signal of great opportunities that we actually have across. I personally do a lot of travels between here and West Africa. We have our counterparts there. And there is nothing as amazing as seeing that their interest actually on Kenyan tea and coffee as well. And so the unlocking of the opportunities is simply to just get on and make things work. That is at level one. Of course, I got to also make it sort of clear that right now in Kenya, we have fair trade certified wine from South Africa. That, of course, the South African producers started exporting already a year ago, and we are seeing it in the Kenyan shelves. That shows a lot of opportunities that, and I'm looking at it from the point of view that, if you look at it, for example, West Africa, you see that with the cocoa production, that the cocoa has to go to Europe for that to be processed and packaged and come back to East Africa or Southern Africa. We know that the opportunity is to have the value chain completed in West Africa is actually quite huge. And so we just need to make this happen. And I think that is where the women in trade need to come in a little bit more. And I'm talking about, of course, the mainstream products. I mentioned wine, I'm talking about coffee, I'm talking about tea and all that. And I started earlier on by mentioning that we started off a project that was looking at women in coffee, which now is actually well known as Zawadi. Zawadi means present or gift. And we're saying, we have a chance to promote women to find themselves able to engage in these high value products, mainstream products. We do not have to struggle to get them to the basics of informal business. We have a chance to support, create environment, enabling environment, but also promoting their ability, their capacity to engage at that level. And so that to me is what we need to do. That let them be let us work together. Let us see where, for example, and I think that's actually what part of what we're doing, looking at the cooperatives that are producing coffee, tea, whatever, and see how much of the engagement we can promote for them to be able to also find themselves at the high level of business and trade.
Absolutely. I just want to go to a question that's on the Q&A, Casper, because it's exactly what you are saying, but I want you to expand on it. So Leone Intaga says, Casper, don't you think the cost of compliance is the reason for the slow uptake of fair trade certification for women SMEs who are often in the informal sector? Are there any subsidies funds SMEs can access to help cushion the cost of compliance, or technical assistance or preparation, funds to help them access the benefits of certification? And I know you will have the answer for me from a fair trade perspective.
Thank you. That's the so-called cost of certification. Yes, is always of concern. But I would actually take it from the perspective that if we had the market, then we would not have the problem, because the value for certification is actually much higher than perhaps what people actually fear. Right now, of course, we are struggling with searching and securing market for a much greater volume of certified products. And we know that once that is achieved, the cost of certification would actually be a non-issue completely. Yes, we know there are those small organizations that, or farmers, that would like to get through into the standards. And this is where the collaboration with the like-minded organizations can come in. Where do we support the producers to be able to produce the quality that is expected within the standards? How do we ensure that the producers, the small producers, have, for example, aggregation center that can actually monitor and look at the compliance with the standards? So this is, it might not actually, and that's part of the reason this is important, collaboration and partnership. And I think Susan had mentioned it before, or you had actually asked that question, is that we may not be able to bear all the costs, but at the end, the amount of investments in terms of supporting and promoting producers eventually come back in good return. So collaboration, partnership, but at the same time, searching for the market for sure. Once we get the markets with the volume that is required, then the cost of certification will actually not be an issue at all.
Sure. I also think that if we focus on the products that we have, and we create excellence behind the products, even before it becomes fair trade, and if you go to then an investor to say, look, I'm doing amazing work, but I would like to now go into the fair trade space. Could you invest? There is a history there for even for an informal sector trader to say, you know, how, and it's about scaling. It's about wherever you are, what is the next step, and what is the next little step, and so on. You can't go from zero to hero in 5 seconds. Casper, 60 seconds, go.
Wow. So I'll make it quick, and I'm just going to pick it up from what Feliz had brought up in terms of SDG. And I would just want to complement that by saying that when we talk about social inclusion, we are talking about including women in business and trade. We are not asking for favor, because we are talking about producers. We are talking about engaging in, like at fair trade, most of these are food items, and the world will always be fed. The world is just the recognition of the amount of time and energy and efforts that women put in work, in their work, and their potential. That to me is the most important thing that I would actually like to press even harder. That the world does not actually seem to recognize that potential, the ability, the resources, the time and everything that women put to work. So much more of, again, our concerted effort as we are in private, business practices, in development sector as we are, to just come together and create the world that has much more awareness of the circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you, Casper. It was wonderful.